We have done some cleaning up, and now it's time to try to merge the functionalities into one player controller for the vehicle and for the first person character. So we're moving in to the player blueprints. No, we're going further into the vehicle blueprints. So the vehicle blueprints, we have this vehicle player controller. This one will eventually disappear, but if we open this one up, we can see that stuff happens on begin play and on tick. So we just need to move these events because these are vehicle specific when we're actually holding the vehicle, when we are the vehicle. So they could just as well be inside of the vehicle. So let's deal with that. If you remember from the character blueprint player, this mapping context is actually added in the player blueprint. So taking a look at that, vehicle player blueprints, player controller base. So here, I think I might have moved it. Yeah, we probably moved it. So here we're actually making the... No. Wait a minute. I'm just... Here we're adding the menu functionalities. And if we're looking at the player, we do this. Add map context default humanoid. So we'll do the same. So we can take this and copy it and go into our vehicle, and we need to duplicate it. Should we duplicate it, or should we make a parent functionality? It might be best to have a parent functionality because we're doing a lot of stuff. We might scale and have different vehicles, so we can just as well make a parent. So it needs to be the same class. It's you can see it here, but you can also double click on it. And the off-road car is of the C++ version, wheeled vehicle pawn. So if we go into blueprints and add blueprint class named wheeled vehicle pawn. So that's the one, wheeled vehicle pawn. That's the base class. So we're making a blueprint version of that one and naming it character P. We could make a P there, but I'm not a fan of 4-letter prefixes. So we just name it as character blueprint base vehicle. That's okay. So this base vehicle can be added. We can add some extra functionalities here. So in the event begin play, we would want to have what we copy pasted, what we copied. So I'm pasting it here. We can delete that one. We need the tick eventually. So begin play, we get the controller for this pawn and cast it. This is a C++ cast, so it's okay. We get the subsystem and it's valid, and adding a context. So for this context it will be the default vehicle. And saving it. So what else did we have in the vehicle player controller? So now we dealt with this one. So this is currently fixed. You can delete that. And we're adding a widget. And we have a self-reference here, so that is actually the player controller, the owning player. So let's remember that one. So we're taking this and going into our base class, base vehicle. And there will be a lot of starting up sequences here. So we just might as well do a comment box around this, adding mapping context, placing it outside, and we need the play controller here again, and we're casting it here, so we could make it like this. So we're putting it outside of this comment box, and we're saving a reference, promote to a variable, and naming this one player controller reference, ref, player controller ref. So now we can use that. If we compile it, we can use that one in there instead, and hooking it up. Another comment box, player controller reference. Like so. And then we're making the widget, and the owning player is the controller. Get that one in. And what else happened? The vehicle HUD, we need to right click this one and create the variable. Fixes that error. So now we have dealt with that one, and then we are actually getting the controlled pawn that we're currently scripting in, cast to wield pawn. That's the actual one that we created. Vehicle movement component, and creating a reference for that one. We don't really need to do that, because that reference is used down here later on. Vehicle component. So on tick, we continuously check the speed and the gear. So if we mark these, we're skipping this one. This is a reference that we're casting and fixing for the controller, but we can grab it directly because we're in the base. It was on tick, so this needs to be done on tick. And what did we do? Yeah, it was this one. Get speed from the movement component, and get gear from movement component. There we go. So we didn't really need. So now we have fixed this one, and we didn't need to do anything about this one. And we can delete this. So now the vehicle player controller is completely empty, and we have moved over everything into the base vehicle. The base vehicle isn't currently in use, so we need to hook it up. So going to the off-road car to begin with, we need to address this. So choosing the class settings, we have this C++ version, going into the CBP base vehicle. Nothing should break because we don't really do anything. Well, some things should break, because here we are doing some stuff. This could be moved into the parent, because this is unnecessary for each car to be doing. So this can be copied and moved into the parent. It was on the begin play. This one is done. We're closing. I can save it and close it down. We can close the player controller there and the player for now. So this one was on begin play. And we just need to make a reference. Cast to vehicle movement component. Why are we doing this? We have the vehicle movement component and we're casting to the vehicle. I'm not an... Alright. We're casting to the chaos vehicle movement component to do some chaos things. So we need to create a variable for that one. Compile it. So now we can delete this one, and on event tick we are using this value to check if we are moving on the ground and altering the damping, doing physics stuff. So I'm copying that one and going into the base vehicle. Interp original rotation. Confirm. Interp original rotation. Why couldn't we bring that one in? Because it might be an internal function. Let's take a look at that. Interp original rotation. All right, it's not a function. It's calling a custom event in our vehicle here, and that needs the spring arm. So it's interping on that one on tick. We can do a nice little thing here, being in the base. So this is an event that's not isn't existing here. So we're removing that. We're hooking up we saved this one, the chaos vehicle. Where is that one located? Search for chaos. In components, obviously. So checking the variables, going into the components. There we have the chaos vehicle. Hooking that one in to check if we're moving on ground or not. Make a comment box. Damping. Control speed. Check a gear. Check speed. There we go. And then on tick we need to address this. We can move this one, the interp to original rotation. This, because we need the spring arm, and the spring arm is added to the vehicle. So each individual vehicle could have a different spring arm, so it's good that it's actually in the child. But so we need to access this, and we can make an empty function to use as an event in a child. So it's a nifty little thing. So if I'm creating a function here and naming it in the same way here, interp to original rotation. We can take that name, copy the name, go into the base vehicle and do that name instead, but I will do on interp to original rotation. And that is everything I will do. And save it, going back to the event graph here. And then I will use this as a trigger. I'm triggering an empty function. Use as an event in child BP. So what does that mean? Now I can go to the child BP and search for on interp, and I have an event here. So I can actually use a function in the parent as an event in the child. So deleting that one and hooking that one in. So each tick, the parent will tell the child to shoot this one, because we need the spring arm and everything. So we have an error. Yeah, of course, we removed stuff here. We don't need this anymore. And since we have a parent with begin play and everything, we currently we're not doing anything with event begin play or tick in the child, but we might do later on. We don't know for sure, so it's best to prepare for it. So we're right clicking and choosing add call to parent function. This signals that we do have a parent and it's doing stuff on begin play. So we could either do override it and do it before here, or we can let the parent do the stuff on begin play and then continue to do more stuff in the child. We do the same with tick, add call to parent. There we go. That's it. That is it. So we have emptied the play controller and we made a parent and dealt with quite a lot of things. So let's see if we have broken anything. We're in the gym vehicle off-road, and if I hit play, we haven't broken anything. That is really cool. Alright, so we removed the save all, the vehicle play controller. No, we haven't removed it, but we have emptied it, so we could basically use our own controller now for this one. So just to test if that works, so we have the off-road game mode. How do we know that? If we're checking the level and world settings, you can see a game mode override, off-road game mode. That's the game mode that we're using. So opening that one up, we can we see here we have the character blueprint off-road car, and here's the controller. Let's use our player controller base. Compile and save. So if we choose to play now, we can still move around, because all the controls of moving the car and everything has been moved to the car. But now we have one play controller to unify it, and we can actually press escape to exit the game, because we implemented that into our play controller base. Brilliant. We're coming a long way here. So step one is done. So let's do that on we fixed the off-road car, and we have the off-road game mode here with the correct player controller. We have switched that one. So let's take a look at the vehicle advanced game mode and exchange that to the PC base. compile. That's it. That's the sports car. So I'm closing it down, and I'm closing the off-road game mode down, and I'm closing the off-road car down, and then I'm going into the sports car. So here's the sports car. We need to do the same here. So we can delete this and this. We need to address this one, but first I'm just gonna compile it and assign, change this one. So clicking on class settings and choosing character blueprint base vehicle and saving. That means that we have a parent now, so we can right click here, add call to parent. This is currently not necessary, it's for precautions for later on. Add call to parent, like this, and just cleaning it up. And then we have this little function that is located in the parent. On interp, add event on interp to original, and hooking that one in instead, like that. That should be it, and we have hooked everything up there. So let's try and verify the world levels gym vehicle. It's the sports car one. Here it is. Hitting play. We can drive, and I can hit escape to move. So that means that not in world, that the blueprints, this one is no longer in use, and it's not. We delete it. One down. So now we need to take into account our interact system. So we want to move up to a car, interact with it, and possess it. That's our goal. So that might be a challenge, who knows. We have the starting position there. Here we should have so that our character spawns, and we can place a car right next to it. So moving into the sports car region, grabbing the sports car and dropping it in. So now we have a sports car there, just standing at the pavement, and we'll change in world settings. We're gonna change to our game mode, our default game mode, because this vehicle game mode will disappear. So the BP game mode base. So changing to that one. If we play now, something broke. Okay, so we're spewing out errors here. It's calling for an access none. That a variable isn't set, and it's actually referring to our character blueprint base vehicle. So I have a hunch on what this is. So if we go into the base and check on tick, we do this here. And if it's not assigned, up here, because here we are grabbing, yes, I see. We don't actually end up here because we don't have a controller. because this pawn is not set yet. So we don't have a controller. So if we don't have a controller, then we should not tick, basically. So how to deal with that in the most convenient way? I think we could make a valid get here. Convert to valid get. So if it's valid, then we continue. If it's not valid, then we're not trying to set anything, because we have failed here. So we don't have any objects. So let's do it like that to begin with. We had some other problems as well, because we're basically ending up in the world. Let's see, where did our start go? So here's our start. It's a little bit squished for no real reason, since we will spawn in our version. So we can just fix that one. It's squished in scale here, so let's do 1, move it up, and hitting end to snap it to the ground. And the car is gone because it's unloaded again, like we had the problem previously. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click it and pin it. It will show, and then I'm gonna create a folder called gameplay, and then I'm gonna add my sports car to the gameplay. I could actually add my player start to the gameplay as well, like that, and then I unpinned it and the sports car is there. Now it resides in a folder structure. So there we go. So if I'm starting now, I'm spawning in and we have a car, and if I'm exiting, we still get a lot of errors. So let's take a look at that again. We again have a lot of errors, and we identify that we once again have an access none, trying to read this time the vehicle HUD from the same blueprint. So we just fixed a thing a little bit too far behind. So what do I mean by that? Going back into the blueprint here, so we fixed this one, the cow's damping, but if it's we have this one, it's complaining on this one. So on tick is trying to get vehicle HUD. When is that one set? Well, it's set here. So here we define the vehicle HUD, but we fail here. So therefore this one is null. So we just need to do a valid get on the vehicle HUD. So if it's valid, then we continue down this road, and if it's not valid, then we do nothing. So we actually don't need this one. So we don't need to spam valid gets. So we can take the component and hook it in without doing the valid get. And save and test. So there's the car exiting, and we don't have any errors because it's slamming on a tick that it's proving to not be valid. Alright, we fixed some errors. So now we need to address the fact that we want to look at the car and interact with it. So going into the base vehicle, we want to be able to interact with this vehicle. We have already made preparation for that. So what do I mean by that? So we go to the class settings and add our, not namespace, our interface. BPI interactable. And here we now see that we have the interfaces here. So on looking at and on stopped looking at and on interact. We want all the cars to be the same so we can actually do the interacting in the car in itself. For now at least. We might end up in a solution where we want to interact with doors instead of the entire car. So then we might want to push it out. Let's just do that. So I'm removing this one. So on looking at, we're doing a print. We're appending. Self. No, wrong self. A little bit too quick with the clicking. Self, a reference to self and hooking it in there. So we can just see if we are correctly using these. We need to save the distance to the player, as we did previously. So we can compare it and not be able to mount the car from way far away. So that one saves that, and we need to also have a variable. Let's duplicate it, Control D, and choose pickup range. I don't like spaces in my names, so I'm deleting them. It's a coder thing. It's not good to use spaces. It makes spaces here and refines it to make it readable. But for code, it's better to just squish them together. Okay, so we have these two values now. We can go into the sports car and add interact. We do it up here. The interfaces, on interact, implement event. It ended up down there. I'm moving it up, because this one is slightly more important. So we get the instigator. That is the one that's doing the interact. That's obviously important. But let's just do a print string. And here we need also a branch holding down B to check if we're close enough. So distance to player, get it. And the pickup range, get it. We once again will hard code it. We soon need to fix that so we don't have too many hard coded things all over the place. So pickup range, we can set it to 2 meters again. So if these two are, if the distance to player is less than or equal to the pickup range, then it should be true. And we should say hello. Looking at the car, I'm hitting F, nothing happens. Going closer. And nothing happens. You know what? Why nothing happens? Well, it's because we have forgotten about the tag. So moving into the base vehicle, we need to click on the class defaults and write tag. And then we have mesh. We have lots of different tags here. We want to adapt the actor tag. The actor tag needs to have interactable. That's correctly spelled. Now it's spraying out as it should. Hitting F, nothing happens. Hitting, it's spraying out the looking at sports car, so we can remove that one. It works. So going into the base vehicle, we don't need to do this anymore because it works. We can have this one. Stopped looking at sports car. Hello. So when now the fun begins. So when we interact, so we want to possess the car, and how to do that? Well, when the interaction going on here, we have the instigator that is actually the player. So if we the one that is doing the possessing of new pawns is the controller. So this instigator is the pawn. So we need to cast to character and retrieve the controller from the character. So this is the player that's walking around in the world, and then we get controller. So this is the controller. And the controller is doing the possessing. So if we're searching for possess. So what do we want to possess? Well, we want to possess, I'm skipping hello there. I'm pushing this one down here and making the code here, the script, a little bit readable. So what do we want to possess? We want to possess this blueprint, the sports car. So we're getting a reference to self and hooking it in. Compiling. So if we try it now, it will hopefully work but be a little bit buggy. But we're moving around here, I'm moving there, I'm hitting. I'm actually the car. This is wonderful news. So why doesn't it work? Well, it's because of this. So the base car here, what's going on in on begin play? Because on begin play, we assign the player controller and everything. But this one shoots off when the session starts. And the car is already in the session. So we can't have it on begin play to make all of these things, because these are player-centric things. So all of these need to be dealt with on possess. So I'm searching on possess, event possessed. So when this one is possessed, we do this. So we can move the camera and we have the gears, but we can't move the car. Nothing works. So why is that? Well, it's because we have conflicting inputs. So moving into the car here, we assign values, not in the car, in the base vehicle. We assign mapping context here, but we have already assigned the same button presses in our character player. So moving into the player again, we can see here we're adding mapping context. So this one is conflicting. So we need to unassign that when the pawn is unpossessed. And there's a node for that as well. So unpossessed. So So when this character, a blueprint player, the first person character, is unpossessed, we should remove mapping context. So we can take these, the cast to player controller and enhanced and the is valid. We don't really need the is valid, but let's take it anyways. So the old controller is hooked in there. So we're casting to the old controller to the C++ version here and grabbing the enhanced, and then from the enhanced we write mapping context, has mapping context, add, remove mapping context. So what should we remove? Well, obviously this one, the default humanoid. And we can just as well fix all of this, because we will eventually possess this one back, and then the same thing will break again. So the event begin play, we can still assign this. So I'm making a control X and paste it up here and assigning the controller, promote to variable. Do I really need to do that? Let's continue the thought process here. I'm not sure we need to do that, because we need to have a possessed here. On pawn possess. No, the node possess the event possessed. So the new controller is a controller object reference, and this one is a player controller object reference. So there we need to cast. We cast to the player controller, and then we hook it in like so. So we don't need this for now. We could just have the event begin play up there doing nothing. So this should still work. But instead of just automatically starting, it's waiting for the player player controller to initiate this pawn, and then on initiation it's doing all of this. So it's actually a better flow of things. It won't do it until it has actually received a command from the controller. So it still works. I'm moving in here. And now I can run away with my car. We have possessed a vehicle. This video is getting a little bit long, so I'm actually ending it now, but we will continue with being able to dismount to exit the car as well. But for now we have actually successfully succeeded with our task. Live long and prosper. See you in the next vid.